My name is Cynthia Flores. I am a graduate of UCLA class 2010. I was involved with a number of things on campus, student government, ASUCLA, student organizations, really anything and everything that had to do with UCLA. And I obviously couldn't get enough. So now I'm back on the UCLA Alumni Board of Directors, and it's been a great pleasure. My day job is I'm an attorney, and in March of last year, I was appointed to the California Agricultural Labor Relations Board by Governor Newsom. So it's been a wonderful learning and working experience, and it's a pleasure to be with each and every one of you this evening. And again, congratulations on finishing up the program. It's from what I've been able to see a very stellar program. And with that, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our panelists for tonight, and thank them as well for providing their time. Our panelists include Jarrett Richmond, Elizabeth Michaels, Jasmine Yen, and Jose Vitella. And while everyone did receive their bios, if you can all provide us with an opportunity to just hear a little bit about yourself. So if you can provide us with your name, graduation year and major, and your current role at the organization at which you are representing tonight. And we can start off with Jose, Jasmine, Jared, and Elizabeth in that order.
Hi, everybody. Jose here. Good to be with everybody. Jose Vitella, class of 2002, almost 20 years. I majored in economics and marching band when I was at UCLA. I'm joking on the last one. There was no marching band major, but I was in the marching band, and that was an exciting time. I'm currently the CEO and founder of Silicon Beach Wealth Management, which is a private wealth management firm headquartered in Santa Monica. Next.
Awesome. I think I was next. I'm gonna jump in. I'm Jasmine. I graduated in 2015 with a major of sociology, and then I minored in global studies. And I'm currently a senior recruiter working at Warner Media based in SoCal.
Cool. I'm Jared Richmond. I graduated in 2011, so 10 years will be this May. Yeah, I majored in sociology as well. And yeah, I'm an account manager at Unified, which is a paid social advertising agency, but I also own my own business. I'm doing copywriting and content curation for social media for a couple brands as well.
I think that was everyone. Thank you all. Excited to start this conversation. So as each of you know, today's panel is entitled Success in the Workplace. And success can have a different meaning for people. So what does success mean to each of you? And this is a question that, feel free to jump in and express what success means to you.
I can start, I guess. I think for me, and if I'm thinking about my professional capacity, success means making an impact, right, in the perspective and approach that our teams and our departments make into the world, right? Working at Warner Media and having so many consumer brands, I think that also looks like the content and the stories that are told, right? Whether it's closely tied to development and production and marketing, or the corporate capacities in HR or legal. I think having more progressive minds and sort of approaches and fresh perspectives in that space is important. So for me, that means bringing in those types of perspectives and allowing for it to be a space where that can be not only accepted, but a space where it's where everybody can thrive and grow and be excited to be there. Yeah.
Excellent. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, I feel like success is measured just like Jasmine said, in impact. I think impact is a huge way to measure the way that you're viewed by others, but also how you view yourself. I think that's really important as well. Like, the impact that you leave on a place might not necessarily be externally felt a lot of the time until you maybe leave that place. But I feel like the impact that you make on yourself, like, challenging yourself to a new goal or challenging yourself to progress within your career in a way that helps you to grow personally and professionally is something that you can lean on at the end of the day. And just measure your impact both internally and externally.
When I think of success in the workplace, I think of joy. I think of being happy. I think of being surrounded with people that you genuinely like, and having customers and clients that you generally like, and always feeling that, you know what, I'm happy. I'm happy because I'm fulfilled. I'm doing the kind of work that I like. I'm being challenged, and I have a virtual limitless trajectory to achieve what I want to achieve. That there's no barrier, and there's no person or there's no manager that is just terrible. In fact, it's the opposite. It's that, wow, I am in a very positive environment surrounded with people that think like me and are positive, and just want to enjoy the environment and contribute in a very positive way. So it's all about positivity to me. I think it's very obvious when you're in an environment that is not consistent with that. And when you're not in that kind of environment, you need to get out right away, because it's not going to change. It's not going to change. So that's how I respond to that.
Thank you all for sharing that. I'm hearing the external, internal impact and how you measure those metrics, how you measure that impact, and also the kind of the work and life balance that is critically important. And that actually is a good introduction to our second question. This is for Elizabeth and Jared. For many of our participants, they're preparing to enter their first job or working on getting their next role. And what piece of advice would you give them as they go through their job search and interview process?
I completely agree with the jungle gym analogy, but that is not only an analogy for career, but an analogy for life. I think that life can be a jungle gym at times. Life is not a ladder. Like, I went to law school right out of college. I dropped out of law school because I was in a touring music group with my best friends from high school. I went to business school after that, and then I was working fully employed while I was doing business school. And then I started working in the industry that I've been in for the past 5 years, which is advertising. So, like, there's, the life experience, leading with your best self and being truthful with the people that are really looking to get to know you in the interview process, I think is a really great way and a really good foot to put forward, so that they understand who you are authentically, that it hasn't been linear, or you haven't been just, spoon fed everything that you've gotten, that you've had to work and you've had to, kind of really kind of bet on yourself in different ways throughout your career and throughout your life journey. So, like, in these interviews, I think leading with yourself is really important. Don't be ashamed of anything. Like, I didn't put that I went to law school for a year and dropped out on my resume. But, if it came up and, if you want to know about who I am, and I feel comfortable sharing that, like, I'll share that regardless. Like, I shared it with you guys. It doesn't matter to me. It cost me a lot of money. That's the only thing that I'm mad about that experience. So, yeah, just, being as authentic as you can to your story, I think will make people understand you, and really understand the type of person they're going to get within their company.
Wonderful. Thank you both. I totally agree. Just co-sign on everything. So Jasmine, let's dig a little bit into the recruiter's mind. So what is one thing that an applicant can do to stand out in the application process? So what is one thing that you see, or something that you see that people should be doing or should not be doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this is going to just echo a lot of the things that Elizabeth and Jared mentioned. I think every person brings a unique story to the table, right? And nobody should try to copy and paste someone else's version of success or formula of success, right? What worked for Elizabeth is very different than what's going to work for Jose, that's going to work for Jared. And so you're going to hear a lot of advice as you go through this process, and everyone's going to tell you what made it successful for them, right? They're going to give you, out of all the best intentions, those pieces that work for them, but that's not necessarily going to work for you or ring true to you, right? So I think you take in all that advice, take in all of those perspectives, and make sure that it always stays true to you and how you want to represent yourself in the workforce. the last thing you want to do is, feel like something doesn't align with yourself and put that forward and then be told that that's the reason that you weren't considered, right? When that was never authentic to yourself in the first place. I think that authenticity piece is really important. I think as the world is changing, we all can tell, right, what is authentic and what isn't. And I think for recruiters, I speak to thousands of people. You can tell when someone sounds a little off, right? Or where there's something that doesn't really ring true or align with other things that they've mentioned. And you can tell, right? A lot of people are excited. A lot of people are curious. And when it sounds inauthentic, then you can't tell what it is. And so it's sort of a flag for everything across the board, right? I think a lot of people also have different stories. I didn't have any internships. I worked 2.5 jobs all the way through college, right? So everyone always told me, you have to have an internship or you're never going to get in, right? And I think there is always a way to advocate for your experience, even if it's an alternative story or path into the world that you're trying to get into. And like Jara said, right, I think you speak to it and be proud of it. It just takes a little more work to piece together all the puzzle pieces of how that, helps you as a candidate, but they're all valid. They all are going to get you to that end goal. It's just knowing how to speak to that experience. And I think it's also be curious, be specific to the role that you're looking at. I think a lot of people think they have to fit into a cookie cutter, right? I know this is exactly what they want, so I'm going to try to make it fit and adjust to that story and that narrative. I think that is, hopefully the world is moving away from that. I think there is more to the conversation than trying to fit that mold. For me, my approach is always, how is this person going to bring value to the team? How are they going to elevate the team that we already have? And how are they going to play to their strengths that are going to complement what is already on the team, right? I'm never looking to copy and paste someone else that we already have, because we have that person, right? I want to see what this person is going to bring to the table, and whatever that looks like, it's going to look like a lot of different things. And I challenge my hiring managers at the same time to really consider what that looks like for them as well, right? Just because that person that they already have on the team was amazing, what else can we do, right? How can we continue to push the needle rather than stay stagnant and stay, where we were 2 years ago when we hired the last person? So thinking of it in that perspective and always playing to your strengths and understanding what that looks like for each specific position, I think always stands out, and that's going to look like different things for different positions.
Wonderful. I think as someone that has been in the workforce for about 10 years, well, kind of, I went to law school but I was still working. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. One of the things that I always feel is important to know is that, and this is to Elizabeth, Jared, and Jasmine's point, what I'm hearing is, you're almost interviewing the place of employment as much as they're interviewing you, right? And so on that note, this question is for Jasmine and Jared. How does a candidate get a good sense of a workplace's culture during the interview process?
Jasmine, I'll go. Elizabeth schooled me. They just heard you talking, so I will go first. Sorry about that, Elizabeth, the first time. But yeah, I think being curious, really asking questions. I scour LinkedIn. I have too many connections on LinkedIn. I'm not gonna front. I've probably added some fake people on LinkedIn, to be completely honest. But be that as it may, like that's neither here nor there at this point. But I think you speak to people who work at the company. During the interview process, you're curious about the cultural aspect. It shows a level of investment within not just the role that you're in, but also within the company that you'll be entering and the type of work environment that you'll be a part of. So, I always, if I'm looking for, I don't know if this helps, and Jasmine, I don't want to like put words in your mouth, but like, if I have somebody that works in a company that could pass my resume to a recruiter, I always ask. Like, if they say no, they say no. But if they say yes, like, it's a handout. Like, it's an extra look. It's a verified look at your resume. Yeah, but as far as workplace culture, just be curious. Don't be bashful asking questions about things like workout stipends or like, little things that you saw at one company that you thought were cool, because they can tell you yes or they can tell you no, but they can't fault you for asking. So yeah, I just think reading up on the website too helps too.
Yeah, just to go off of what Jared said, I think it's important to know what you care about, right? And what are your core values, because that's going to look like different things, right? Some people care about title, some people care about money, some people care about benefit packages, location, commute, all of those things, but you have to know what matters for you, and then make sure that you get those answers throughout the process, right? And as a recruiter, the way that I approach it, and I want to put a caveat on it, I know that there's a lot of different recruiters out there. I know people have different approaches, different levels of care and commitment for the job. So just throwing that out, for me, I do care about my job, and I, find a lot of fulfillment in helping people find their dream jobs, right? And dream companies, hopefully Warner Media. If not, then that's okay, right? Because it's not going to be the best fit for everybody. And I know that. All I can do as a recruiter is provide you all the puzzle pieces and then see if that's a puzzle that you want, right? Or are excited about. And if not, that's okay. I take no offense. I want you to be excited if you join the company, not only for the position itself, but the team and the company culture. And it's something that you want to invest in to continue to push the needle for, right? So ask me all the questions, whether it's culture, that workout stipend, right? Is it commuter benefits? Is it, HBO Max, whatever that looks like? I'm here to give you all those puzzle pieces. Salary too. I have that conversation from the very beginning, just to make sure, and the way I put it is to make sure you can free fall into love with the job, the team, the role, and you don't have that like little flag in your head of like, oh, somebody's going to pull the carpet right from under me because we're going to have something that doesn't match up. So always consider the recruiter as your advocate, your cheerleader, because that's what I'm going to do. If I feel that there's a good fit for whatever the role is, then I'm going to say, I think this person's the perfect, I'm going to speak on behalf of you. But if I don't know the questions or your values or what you care about, and I can't align that for you, then I can't fully advocate for you in that way, right? So I think those are big pieces, but ultimately it will always drill down to what you care about. And if that company has the same values, and if it's money, great. If it's title, great. But if it's other things, that are growth, mobility, also great. But nobody can tell you that unless you are clear about, what you keep at your core as important, right? Or optional, right? Everybody has those non-negotiables and then the ones that can be negotiated.
Wonderful. So once, our candidates get that dream job, they land it, and they're beyond the interview process. This is a question for Jose and Jared. How does that person place themselves in a role or excuse me, place themselves in a position for success in their new role?
I have two bits of advice in this regard. Number one, learn. Number two, serve. So with respect to learning, the sooner that you can become technically proficient at what the role entails, the more success and the more enjoyment and the more options you'll have over time. In my business, in financial services, there are a couple of key designations. There's a CFA or the CPA or the CFP designation, okay? The sooner you can get those roles, those designations and that education, the better. Because what that'll mean is that others will immediately look to you for insights and they'll involve you in the team. Whereas if you don't have the knowledge yet, if you're still trying to develop the skills, you may not participate. You may be left out a little bit. So the sooner that you, and it's really always up to you. Never look to the company to determine, to train you, basically. It's not up to the company to train you, even though it's in their best interest to. It's not up to them. It's always up to you. You own your skill. You own your education, right? So it's up to you. So take advantage of all the experience that the company and the role will give to you, but go beyond that and go out and pick up whatever designation or knowledge or skill. Take the sales training, take the, join whatever supplemental course, UCLA extension, whatever it is. Get that under your belt as soon as possible, okay? And as much as possible. So that's advice number one. Number two, serve. Look to help others, genuinely help others. their work, and ask others, what can I do to help you with your job, with no expectation of anything in return. Because eventually, guess what? You help enough other people, you chip in when needed, when it's all hands on deck, you're the first person to jump in. Eventually, when the time comes for you to require some assistance or input, people will want to join you. That is if you're in the right organization. If you're in a good, positive, cohesive, team-oriented organization, then others will come to your aid as well when you need it. So I think you put in the time, educate yourself, and seek to help others as much as possible. And I think that'll lead to success.
I'm going to piggyback off both of those. In learning and serving, I think the best way to position yourself for success in a role is to obviously learn and serve, but the way that you learn and serve is to network. Your company is just another network that you're entering into. So finding those opportunities to serve takes knowing somebody who has those opportunities to give you. Having those opportunities to learn comes from knowing the person that can teach you what you need to know. So leading with your truest self, like I said in the interview process and everything, I think doubles down as you enter the role that you're in, because curiosity and a service-focused attitude are rewarded in these positions, especially when you're new. Like when you have tenure and stuff like that, like they aren't really. If you're trying to take another training, they're like, oh yeah, you're trying to take a training again. Like, sometimes some companies value that, some companies don't. But when you start, you have this fresh perspective and this fresh face that everybody within the organization is really looking to bolster up. So remember your standing as a new person in a company, learn and serve, but find those people who you can learn from, opportunities you can learn from, and those you can help with, the serving that you can do as well.
Wonderful. As we all know, the workplace looks a little bit different in present day. This question is for Jasmine and Elizabeth. What is one strategy you would recommend for our participants to be successful in the remote workplace?
I think I have two as well. So sorry for also disregarding the one aspect. I would say that it's so hard to get those like water cooler conversations, right? That sort of social interaction without having some task-oriented conversation. So finding ways to either check in, have casual conversations with people, right? Really strengthen or build that non-work related relationship where possible. Because I think those really come in handy, right? For Warner Media, it's a huge company. And it's easy to get sort of stuck in a silo. It's really easy to do so, right? So for me, I like to check in with people that I have relationships with, check in with my new hires, see how they're doing, or just have conversations and just see how people are doing regardless. And then I think that really helps me to be successful ultimately, because then I sort of understand a little more of how the whole company operates and really is strung together, right? Which I know is a very daunting thing to come in to a new company and understand, who is who, how does everything touch each other. And I find that by having my casual conversation, that helps me to play that new person card, even though I'm 6 years in, and say, oh, how does that work together, right? Or how do you relate to this function, this team? And then understanding that bigger picture always helps me keep in perspective my function and how I can benefit or provide to the larger company. So I guess maybe it folds into one answer. Hopefully that worked.
That totally worked. So we've talked a little bit about the workplace, but one of the biggest factors of success in any workplace is a supervisor. So this question is for Jose and Elizabeth. What is the best way to build a solid foundation with a new supervisor?
Communication, period. Okay, I'll get into that. If you're working for me, if I'm leading the team and you're on my team, the best thing you could do is every day, or as often as possible, tell me what you're gonna do, then go back and do it, and then tell me what you've done. If you can do those three things over and over and over again, our relationship is going to be amazing. If you fail to do that, I'm always going to wonder, did it get done? Was there an issue? Did I not communicate properly? When's it going to get done? Did I set that expectation properly? What's going on here? So communicate, okay? It's not enough to do your job and think that someone will observe that you've done your work and that you're off the hook and that it's done. No, you gotta talk about what you've done. And I think that's good. I think if you do more of that, be your own PR person, so do the work and then change the hat and become the PR person for yourself. That'll be great. So I appreciate the communication. Supervisors will appreciate the communication.
So just a follow-up question. This might be just me being curious, but when you say communication, is that, verbal communication? Is it through email, or, do you have like a best practice for how to communicate that? Because I love the idea of being your own PR person. I think that's
that's a great question. So keep in mind, I graduated in 2002. This is, so technology options were not what they are today. It wasn't that long ago, but okay. So what do I like? I love verbal communication. I love when someone calls me. I love it. But if we're doing regular Zoom meetings, then that's sufficient. If it's Slack, that's totally great. Email, so it almost doesn't matter. But I think a little bit of everything is important. That human voice, that message, the communication that's verbal, some element of verbal is great.
Thank you. As you can see, I'm taking notes. So the kind of narrowing in on what we're experiencing right now in the workforce. Obviously, the pandemic has changed so many industries in profound ways. What are 2 ways that your industry has changed during the pandemic? And this is a question for everyone.
I guess I can go. I work in, so yeah, the pandemic has been an interesting time for me. I'll just give you kind of 15-second overview. I've been laid off twice since September 2019, but I've been at the company that I'm at currently for the past, 8 months, and have owned my own business for a year and a little bit now. So yeah, I was working at an agency, was laid off from that agency in 2019, started working for myself, and then got another contract position in between the job that I have now, but I was laid off from that because of the pandemic. So I think all industries have increased the need to be dynamic. I think to think on your feet, to rally behind the skills that you've picked up outside of the workplace and some within the workplace. Like I had done some copywriting work within one job. So I was like, okay, let me reach out to some brands that I think that I can support in a copywriting perspective. And now I have 2 clients that I work on that monthly for. So just like kind of leaning back on the skills that you've kind of grown and fostered throughout your career journey has been a way that all industries have changed. But, in the industry that I'm in, paid social, specifically working in entertainment, it's just working from home. Like I know it's the easy answer, but it's the most fundamental answer to how any industry has changed. Like all meetings have been taken online. Like I haven't seen anybody. I don't know anyone that I work with personally. I have not met them in person. I was hired from my living room. So you know what I mean? So it's just like, that's just completely, I'm a human person. Like me and Jose are like this. Like I feel like we could be homies because I'm so into that interpersonal connection. I think that that's a hugely important part of your workplace experience. And I don't have that. So finding a water cooler on Slack is so hard. Having to walk out of your bedroom to, luckily I have a second bedroom that can be an office. Some people don't even have that. So like, there are just so many, I think more, not necessarily walls. I don't want to use the word walls, but like walls you have to build around your work life within your personal life now. Creating a structure around your workday, creating a routine that your workday cannot interfere with, I live with my girlfriend. I can't be upset about something at work and then have that spill over into my relationship. Like, that's not okay. That's not healthy. Like, and she would be mad, like, easily. That's not something that, you want to have happen. So, to sum that all up, sorry, it was somewhat long-winded, but create barriers for your work life and your personal life. One, that's how all industries have changed. That barrier has kind of been blurred a little bit, but be that as it may, there are ways that you can be dynamic in that way, and also maintain some sort of dynamic. And the word agency came up earlier in this conversation. Being able to be dynamic, think on your feet, because jobs that seem to have like 10-year opportunities and long track trajectories don't necessarily have those anymore. So yeah, I think those are the two for me. The pandemic's been good to me though, but it started out pretty wild, not gonna front.
I can piggyback off the entertainment industry aspect. I think it's more evident how media and entertainment has been affected, right? You can't go see the movies in the movie theater. People had to watch Tenet, right, in some kind of smaller version than he probably wanted everyone to see it. So I think that's probably the obvious one. I think it really, across the industry, fast-tracked the need to prioritize super serving fans, right, in ways that they want to see content with the content they want to see. Or don't know they want to see because we haven't seen that kind of representation before, right? So I think that has been a big shift in the industry that I think it was always going that way, but COVID has really pressure cooked that. And it's forced every long-standing and new player in the media industry to really figure out what that formula of success is. And that's going to look like different things, hopefully for each company. So I think that's probably a big one. And I find in some ways it's also democratized entertainment, right? You don't have to live in LA anymore to work, at least in this version. You can work from home. You see executives that seem maybe intimidating on the lot, with kids running all over them and, the sirens and their animals jumping all over them. It makes them feel more human, right? In ways that their nice corner office didn't make them seem before. So I find in those types of ways, and I know this is looking just upwards and maybe not downwards, but I think that's helped people feel a little more human in understanding, even executives or these otherwise daunting figures seem a little more, you can find things to relate to that you may otherwise be like, okay, let me just get to the point and run out of the office before they realize they probably shouldn't have been here. Yeah.
In financial services, I've found the pandemic has created two fairly tectonic shifts in our industry. At least some of the trends were accelerated. The first is our clients embracing technology and the ability for us to just meet via Zoom instead of everyone having to drive in a car or me having to fly out and see people and so on. And so that's created just a great deal of efficiency and so on. And so I think it's good news for young Bruins because you're born with an iPhone, I think. And so your ability to adapt and operate in this world where everything's done digitally, I think, I just think that's such a wonderful thing. And so in wealth management, specifically asset management, it's a very old industry. The average age and the demographics of the executives in our business is 62 to 65-year-old white male. Well, that's they operate a little differently than the rest of us and the rest of you. And I think the second big shift, which is somewhat related to my comment just now, is that, and this is very positive, I think, whether it was induced by the pandemic or not, and Jasmine mentioned this, there's a lot more of a desire for our industry to finally embrace diversity. For decades, maybe even centuries, our profession, wealth management, management of money, has been limited to the top 1%, which looks one way and they talk a certain way and so on. It's different. It's fundamentally changing. Now it's going from no diversity to some diversity. That's a huge shift, okay? Fewer than 1% of all firms, of all registered investment advisory firms, for example, are owned by African Americans or Hispanics. That's a fact. Less than 1% in the country. Are you kidding me? Well, that's changing. The numbers are increasing rapidly, and I'm doing something about it, and hopefully a lot of you will do something about it also. So we're just seeing this just additional diversity, and so hopefully we'll be able to look back and say, you know what, 2020 was the year that really shifted. And so again, that's great news for everyone here, because the new generation of Bruins, we're more diverse. There are more opportunities for women, people who are less, who have not been represented. It's changing. I think it's already changed, and it's moving in that direction. So I'm just supremely optimistic about the future and what the future holds. And I hope that some of you will participate in some of that change as well.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing. I'm just going to turn it over to Gloria for Q&A at this time. I know we might have some folks that are interested in picking your brains further, but it's been my pleasure moderating the panel. You all did an amazing, excellent job.
Thank you. You were amazing as well.
Well, Bruins are excellent. And so thank you to all of our Bruins that are here on our panel. I wanted to now give an opportunity for our participants to be able to ask you questions based on, some of the things that you shared, or if they had questions as well. If you want to throw it in the chat, or if you even want to raise your hand or even unmute yourself, please do. This is a fantastic opportunity that you have to get these experts to answer some of your questions and put together the things that you've been building over the last 5 weeks. Does anyone have any questions? Scanning for any raised hands. William, feel free to go.
Yes, I have a question just regarding what you would think about answering these specific types of interview questions. And these are those difficult questions where they ask you to talk about when something went wrong and how you fixed it, or maybe what your greatest weakness is, like those tougher interview questions where you want to avoid giving a negative answer. Can you give some insight on how you go about that, or what you're looking for in an answer on the other end of that?
Jasmine, do you want to go first? Because I'll go from the answerer's perspective and you go from the asker's perspective.
We can tag team it for sure.
Cool. You go ahead.
I think from the interview, I personally hate the "what's your weakness" question, so I never ask it. I think, again, there's many recruiters out there, lots of different flavors of recruiting, so keep that in mind. I know some people have checklists that they go through, some have company mandated questions. I personally have a conversational style, so that doesn't give me anything more than I feel like just trip someone up, and it's usually a canned answer, right? And I don't really know what to do with canned answers other than type it out word for word, right, in my notes. I think it's more so when you're asked that question, how you approach it, right? And how you walk through your thought process of it, right? So, the flaw I find with that question is you're going to say something and then you're going to say, oh, but I've worked on it. And this is how I have, risen from that type of weakness, right? But I think it's always that opportunity to show that you grow, right? You are aware of where you have areas of opportunity and how you grow from it and approach that that growth or that opportunity. There may be some people that just sit in that and say, this is my weakness. I don't know if it's something as easy as like, I'm late, and then they sit there with that. It could be, I see this position, it's in the publicity space. I don't have the strongest, press release skill set, so I've been taking courses, right? So that's maybe something more constructive that comes out of it. So I think it's always taking a step back and knowing that anytime you get a question, it's knowing that that's some kind of assessment of you, right? And then figuring out how to best utilize that question to still showcase your skill set, your strengths, and you as a human being too.
I think having something thought of first, not a canned answer, but something that you can expand upon is really important, so that you're not racking your brain of something that you've messed up in the past and you take a lot of time to answer that question. I do think that it's a terrible question, to be completely honest. It's trash. But I think that, when people ask you about um, things that you might not necessarily be proud about, as far as your work history or anything like that, or things that you've done that aren't necessarily agreeable in all regards or a weakness, um, I think you treat it just as if you're describing a positive. You own it. Um, you understand how it has impacted you in the past, and you then frame it just as that. It's not something that is a foreshadowing onto what you will be like as a future employee, but owning it and really standing behind your answer, I think is really important.
Yeah, and I think also coming prepared to the conversation really shows in those questions, right? And maybe it's less so the answer, or it could be the answer itself. But if you come up with something like, oh, I tend to be late to meetings sometimes, and that sort of stumbling through and getting to that end response does show more than the response itself, right? So always coming prepared, anticipate those silly questions because you may get them, but always utilizing every question to speak and round you out as a candidate. I get a lot of people that go on these long-winded journeys with their answers that really don't lead anywhere. And I'm trying to follow and, hope that we are getting somewhere at some point. And I take it for what it is. But I think the people that come prepared to the conversation always pack a punch with each answer, each opportunity that they're given to have, to respond to something. Those are the ones that stand out and are most impressive and really, rise to the top.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? It looks like I have a question here from Stephanie. Stephanie, do you want to share your question? I'm happy to read it too. So let's see. Stephanie asks, how do you find opportunities to have those water cooler conversations with coworkers in a remote working environment?
I guess I can jump in because I think I brought that up. I know, so for us, we have Slack as one of our forms of communication. And so I think there's different integrated apps, right, that you can use, like Donut, I believe, that will partner you automatically. Or I have opportunities where I will just check in and say, hey, I don't think we've ever interacted yet. Would love to just, put 10 minutes on your calendar, put a face to the name and ask you, just to meet you really. Then for me as a recruiter, one thing that I love doing and I do miss in the pandemic is setting up happy hours for all of my new hires to meet people outside of their departments. That's something I just personally find a lot of joy in. It's not really in my purview, but I love being able to pull people out of their departments in silos to meet and interact with each other. For us, we have resource groups too, right? So I participate in a lot of those, or volunteer opportunities that will put me into contact with people outside of my department. I'm also part of a book club. We're reading Cast right now, which is a great book. And so that puts me into contact with a lot of other people too. So I try to find balance. I think we're all busy and somehow 2021 is just going off and just running crazy, trying to make up for 2020, I guess. But I think there's still sense in balance in, finding that culture, that those interactions and relationships with people that aren't always focused on some task, some goal or timeline that you need to hit, which is equally as important. But I think that burnout aspect, especially with this pandemic wall, is extremely important for the long term too.
Thank you.
And I would argue that right now, the conditions, despite the fact we can't meet each other in person and get to know each other in person, if anything, right now might actually be a time when you can get on someone's calendar and they might be more receptive to it, if only because, I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of longing for the human connection. I really do miss making those, developing new connections and new relationships. And so if you ask me, are you around for 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the week, or at the end of the day, or I'm going to go for a walk and I just call you, I would love that right now. I just want to talk to someone new, and so I would say right now you might actually find a very receptive audience.
Can I also just add for people that are on the introverted side, right, that may not want to do that proactive approach, this is a great chance to, just send a message out and then just interact over, long term, for maybe a week's time and just ping people just to get to know them in that way too. Because I know maybe not everyone is looking for additional FaceTime. Maybe some people are zoomed out. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities to find it. If you are interested, I think there's a lot of people that you don't know would be receptive to Jose's point as well.
So it looks like we have one more question from Diane. So when you made your transition to your jobs and career, how did you connect dots between past experiences and shape your story? Do you have any good tips on this? And many of our participants are new grads, are in their first roles, or even, even our grad students looking to go into industry. So does anyone have any good thoughts about how you can connect the dots from your past experiences to shape your story?
I think, your story is as good as anybody else's. So I think one, believing in every step on your journey, contributing to the person who you are. I think believing that gives a certain credence to your story that people can kind of attach themselves to. I think finding that through line that you can elaborate on as you're going through these things is really important as well. And, like just really finding those through lines that can tell. Like I've been in the advertising industry, so I've been in the advertising industry for 4 years. I worked in all different types of account. I'm now an account manager at a paid social advertising agency, working in entertainment. And it's just like, just like practice your story, being able to speak eloquently about everything that you've done in a way that makes it seem not necessarily greater than it is, but like it all meant something to you. Is Jasmine, don't correct me if I'm wrong, that people that are interviewing you are really into the idea of. I think being cognizant of where you might have had a misstep and how that's contributed to the vigor with which you're looking for your next opportunity. Like if you're in grad school or you just graduated, or talk about the pandemic and how it's kind of changed the way that you look at work, and the opportunity is that much more important to you. Like those types of things, like innate humanness, I think is something that interviews sometimes miss. And people who are starting to interview are feeling like you can't be human. You have to be a cookie cutter for the role. I think that's so wrong. I think that it's taught so incorrectly. So yeah, you will become an asset for a company, but they're not just getting your work ethic or your work product. They're getting you. So I think that is just as important, if not more important, in kind of building that story that you tell the people.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's stand by your story, right? It's the life that you have lived, and it's the life that you're going to carry with you, and no one is going to know it more than you, right? I think I get a lot of people that ask, well, what am I good for? I'm like, I don't know. One, I don't know your story, right? You haven't shared it with me in a way that does you justice, right? And then also, I don't know where you want to go. I think it requires everyone to come to the table 50-50, right? I can provide as much context and guidance, but you as a candidate have to come to the table prepared with your story, right? Knowing what you bring to the table. My longest job, all 4 years of college, was I worked as a tutor and then eventually as assistant center director at a math tutoring center, right? How does that land me where I am? I wouldn't know, but I did a lot of work prior to the interview process to know what I wanted out of a job. I didn't know title, I didn't know industry, but I knew aspects of what I wanted out of the role, right? And you can approach it in that way. There is no formula for life, right? I think we all have learned that, we all know that, but understanding that applies for everything, right? I think all of our stories are, again, valid. They are strengths that we all bring to the table. And again, to Jared's point, right? You are bringing your whole human being. There's no way that you can truly compartmentalize your personality out of it. And more so, I think it's always going to be a strength. You just have to find the team that's going to mesh well with and allow you to continue to grow and shine in. And that's not going to be every company. It might not be the big fancy names that you see, right? It might be smaller companies. That might be the space for you. And there's validity in all of those paths and journeys, but you have to know what you want out of it and where you're hoping to go. I worked a work study job, right? And that's what landed me at Warner Brothers to start with. And work studies for financial aid people, right? Like, but that's not the shiny internship at the agencies that people typically hear. So anytime I speak with students or anybody, I'm always going to advocate for the alternative pipelines, right? If you're going to hear 10 people already tell you the internship path, I said, okay, well, if I had to work at a Jamba Juice, right, or work for my parents over the summer, those are also just as important, but it takes a little bit more work to figure out, okay, what did that experience teach me, right? And with Warren, it teaches you a little bit more, right? Because you have to have that awareness of yourself and your skill set and how that applies to the role. You're still going to get that corporate setting. You're still going to get that, task management, that ability to be dynamic and juggle a lot of different things at the same time. You just have to take a step back and honor all of those experiences and be able to speak to it and not be embarrassed. I think a lot of people that try to fit into this cookie cutter diminish the work that they have brought or have done and don't speak to it when it should be at the forefront and be spotlighted, because it does apply and it all makes you even stronger of a candidate and then also just a human being too.
Well, thank you all to all of our panelists for your amazing insights, sharing your experiences and stories, being vulnerable, and just giving us some great, food to, really chew on as, our participants are, moving forward in their job search or in their careers. It's inspiring to know that there are Bruins that are coming ahead of us that have, walked the path. And, thank you for reaching back and sharing your stories and your experiences with us. So join me in an electronic round of applause, send your reactions, send your claps. Thank you to all of our panelists for being here today. I want to officially congratulate all of our participants. You did it. You finished the 5-week program. Congratulations. We couldn't, this is, you're part of a Bruin network. You're part of an amazing network with these people. And, you don't need to walk your career journey alone. And so, our alumni are here to support you and be your champions. But like so many people have shared today, know your story too. You are the expert on you. No one knows you better than you. And we can't put words in your mouth. We can't tell you what to say. But as I know from my experience too, as an interviewer, we are dying for you to do well. No one wants you to come in and fail. Like, that's not how people see you. They want you to be yourself, to love your story, and to be great. And so we know that you are. And so thank you for being part of this program. I want to now turn it over to Eric. We have our last 15-minute networking time for our panelists. And Cynthia, thank you so much for being here. You are welcome to stay with us if you would like. But if you have to go, we know that that's okay too. So Jared, thank you. That's great advice.
Yeah, don't be shy on LinkedIn. All the panelists, I'm coming in your inbox hot very soon. Just letting you know it's coming. But yeah, thank you guys all for the time.